Let us commence with the understanding of simple Keynesian consumption function, theoretical and empirical issues. The famous economist J.M. Keynes, in his well-known book General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money, stated that the volume of employment in the economy depends upon the level of effective demand. The level of effective demand is determined by the aggregate demand function and aggregate supply function. In the simple Keynesian consumption model, the author made use of primarily two components of aggregate demand, with consumption and investment. Aggregate demand is defined as the total amount of goods and services produced in an economy at a given price and in a given time period. The various components of aggregate demand include consumption, investment, government expenditure and net exports. Mathematically, aggregate demand, that is AD, is equals to C plus I plus G plus NX, where C stands for consumption, I stands for investment, G stands for government expenditure and NX stands for net exports, which can be further broken down into exports minus imports. Consumption is the largest component of the aggregate demand and plays a very important role in its calculation. The counterpart of consumption is saving. It is that part of income which is not spent on consumption. For this reason, analyzing consumption is important for savings is a precondition for capital accumulation and long-run growth. It thus becomes imperative to study the consumption, since it does not only help in capital accumulation and long-run growth, but it also plays an important role in the business cycle fluctuations as well as economic welfare. Therefore, before we begin to examine the various theories of consumption, let us first define consumption.
After studying this module, you shall be able to know the simple Keynesian consumption function, understand the properties of the Keynesian consumption function, identify the various determinants of consumption function, evaluate the measures of propensities to consume and save, analyze the theoretical and empirical issues. The consumption of a commodity depends upon the level of income. The consumption function refers to an empirical income-consumption relationship. It is a functional relationship indicating how consumption varies as income varies. It is a simple relation between two aggregates, income and consumption. Symbolically, the relationship is represented as C is equals to function of Y, where C represents consumption, Y represents income, and F is the functional relationship. In the functional relation, consumption is the dependent variable and income is the independent variable. Apart from income, there are other factors as well. However, consumption function represents a functional relationship between income and consumption based on ceteris paribus assumption. For understanding consumption, we also need to analyze its counterpart, that is savings. Savings is that part of the disposable income that people do not spend. The level of savings in a country is a crucial determinant of its long-run steady state. Thus, we can say that income is equals to consumption plus saving. Y is equals to C plus S, or Y minus C is equals to S. Both consumption spending and savings are explained by the level of income, and the relationship between consumption saving and the level of income are shown by the consumption function and the saving function respectively. The consumption function in the simple Keynesian model is defined by the following equation. C is equals to A plus BY, where C represents consumption, A is the autonomous consumption, B is equals to delta C by delta Y, which is also known as marginal propensity to consume, and Y stands for income. The equation shows that the consumption level of an individual is influenced by an autonomous consumption and a constant fraction of income, which is BY. Keynes theorized that there will always be some amount of consumption even when the income is zero. This is called the autonomous consumption and will always be positive. This is the first essential characteristic of the Keynesian consumption function. Secondly, the theory states that current consumption depends on current income alone. and with the increase in income, the consumption also increases. However, due to marginal propensity to consume, consumption increases with the increase in income but less than proportionately. In other words, as income increases, consumers do not spend the entire income. They spend part of it and choose to save the rest. Keynes propounded the fundamental psychological law of consumption, which forms the basis of the consumption function. The law implies that there is a tendency on the part of the people to spend on consumption less than the full increment of income. The three propositions of the law: first, when income increases, consumption spendings also increases, but less than proportionately, implying that as income increases, individuals' wants also get satisfied alongside, and as a result, the need to spend more on consumer goods diminishes. This does not imply that consumption spending falls with increase in income. In fact, it increases with increase in income but by a smaller amount. Second, the part of the increased income that is not spent is saved. Thus, the increased income is divided between consumption and savings. Third, increase in income always leads to an increase in both consumption and saving. This is based on the earlier propositions because an increase in income increases consumption but less than proportionately, which leads to an increase in savings. In the given diagram, income is measured on the x-axis and consumption and savings is measured on the y-axis. The line passing through the origin shows income is equals to consumption plus savings. The consumption function, which is C is equals to A plus BY, indicates that even if income is zero, consumption will not be zero. In other words, at zero income, consumption is positive. Thus, consumption function is a schedule of various amounts of consumption expenditure corresponding to different level of income. Also, when income is greater than consumption, there is savings, and when income is less than consumption, there is dissavings. In this analysis, Keynes has used technical attributes or properties of consumption function: average propensity to consume, that is APC, and marginal propensity to consume, that is MPC, which are discussed. The average propensity to consume refers to the ratio of consumption spending to any particular level of income. Symbolically, it is denoted as APC is equals to C by Y, where C is consumption, Y is income, expressed as the percentage of income consumed. For instance, if the income is say rupees 40 and consumption is rupees 20, then APC is equals to C by Y, which is equals to 20 by 40, which is equals to 1 by 2, which is equals to 0.5, which implies that 50% of the income will be used for consumption spending. However, the APC declines as income increases because the proportion of income spent on consumption decreases. The average propensity to consume at any level of income is expressed in equation as CY. The marginal propensity to consume refers to the rate of change in consumption resulting from a change in income. Marginal propensity to consume indicates the proportion of additional income that is used for consumption. MPC is the slope of consumption function. Symbolically, it is denoted as MPC is equals to change in C by change in Y, where change in C represents change in consumption and change in Y represents change in income. For instance, let us suppose that income increases from rupees 40 to rupees 60 and the consumption spending rises from rupees 30 to 37. MPC is equals to 60 minus 40 divided by 30 minus 37, which is equals to 20 by 7, which would be equals to 2.85. According to Keynes, the value of MPC will always lie between 0 and 1. Secondly, the marginal propensity to consume is important for filling the gap between income and consumption through planned investment to maintain the desired level of income. And lastly, MPC is useful to the multiplier theory. Higher the MPC, higher will be the multiplier, and vice versa. The average propensity to consume and marginal propensity to consume are related as when the consumption function is linear, as income increases, MPC is constant but APC is declining. In general, APC and MPC both decline as income increases, but MPC declines at a faster rate than the decline in APC. If the consumption function passes through the origin, APC and MPC will be equal and constant. The simple Keynesian consumption function inhibits certain important properties that can be summarized as follows. First, the marginal propensity to consume is positive but less than 1. Second, the marginal propensity to consume is the same for any change in income. And third, APC is infinity at a zero level of income and decreases as income increases but is always greater than MPC. The saving function is the counterpart of the consumption function. Saving is that part of income which is not consumed or spent. An individual income is divided into consumption, and saving implies that some part of the income is used for consumption spending while the rest is saved. Thus, the saving function describes the relationship between saving and the level of income. It will change with the change in the level of income. Symbolically, it is denoted as S is equals to F of Y, where S is savings, Y is income, and F stands for functional relationship. As put forth by J.M. Keynes, that consumption expenditure and savings by the households depend on the level of income, and only a portion of additional income is used for consumption, with the rest used for savings. As put forth by J.M. Keynes, that consumption expenditure and saving by the households depend on the level of income, and only a portion of additional income is used for consumption, with the rest used for savings. Indicating y is equals to c plus s, where c is equals to a plus by. Now substituting equation second in first, y is equals to a plus by plus s is equals to y minus a minus by, s is equals to minus a plus y minus by, s is equals to minus a plus 1 minus b into y. The saving function is shown in the given diagram. According to Keynesian consumption function, savings are positively related to the level of disposable income. At low level of income, consumption spending may exceed income, causing dissaving. When income is 20, consumption is 30 and saving is minus 10. In simple words, the propensity to save is nothing but a tendency to save. Every individual who earns income has a tendency not to spend the entire amount but to save some part of that income. This tendency to save part of the income is a propensity to save. Average propensity to save is defined as the ratio of total saving to total income. This ratio is given by S by Y. It is the saving counterpart to the average propensity to consume. Symbolically, it is denoted as APS is equals to S by Y. As APC is the ratio of consumption to the level of income, similarly, APS is the ratio of saving to the level of income. For instance, if the income of an individual is say rupees 100 and saving is say rupees 50, then the average propensity to save will be 1 by 2 or 0.5. That is, 50% of the income is saved and the remaining 50% is consumed. APS is a counterpart of APC. Both together constitute total income. It can be derived as follows. Y is equals to C plus S. Divide both sides by Y. We get Y by Y is equals to C by Y plus S by Y. 1 is equals to APC plus APS. APC is equals to 1 minus APS. As income increases, APC decreases, then APS must increase as income increases because these two ratios add up to 1 at all levels of income. MPS is the counterpart to MPC. The marginal propensity to save is defined as the ratio of the change in saving to the change in income for any change in income. Symbolically, it is expressed as MPS is equals to change in S divided by change in Y, where change in S is the change in savings and change in Y is the change in the level of income. Similarly, one can derive the relationship between marginal propensity to consume and save given Y is equals to C plus S. A change in income would bring a change in consumption and saving, implying change in Y is equals to change in C plus change in S. Similarly, divide Y both sides, we derive change in Y divided by change in Y is equals to change in C by change in Y plus change in S by change in Y. It gives 1 is equals to MPC plus MPS, or MPS is equals to 1 minus MPC. MPC and MPS also add up to 1. If MPC is positive but less than 1, then it follows by subtraction because MPS is equals to 1 minus MPC. That is, MPS must also be positive but less than 1. Furthermore, if the APC is always greater than the MPC, it follows that APS is always less than MPS. Among many insights found in the general theory, one of the most useful has been the consumption function. Prior to Keynes' theory, consumption had been viewed as a passive residual, the amount of income remaining after saving. Since the decision to save was determined by the payment for the utility lost from consuming, consumption depended on the interest rate. However, Keynes thought that consumption was both more important and complicated. Since expenditure creates its own income, consumption fundamentally affects the level of economic activity. The motive for consumption ranges far beyond simple payments. There are not many people who would alter their way of living because the rate of interest has fallen or risen. As put by Keynes, spending and savings are influenced by a host of objectives, subjective needs, psychological habits, etc. He recognized that people must consume to survive, for an individual habitual standard of life depends on his income, and proposed the psychological law of consumption. However, from the time of its introduction, much criticism has been levied against the consumption function as analyzed by Keynes. Many critics claimed that it is incomplete, makes inconsistent predictions, and underlines wrong consumption behavior. The crucial debate has been that the consumption function, as analyzed by Keynes, is simplistic and short sighted. Keynesian consumption implied that current consumption depends upon current income alone and at a point in time. This runs counterintuitive to the idea of arriving at a generalized long run or lifetime spending behavior. Modigliani and Brumberg argued that if a rational individual would base consumption decisions at any point of time on income at that point of time, that is, if they maximize utility of consumption subject to an income constraint, then based on the idea that consumer units are forward-looking, rational consumers should also seek to maximize the utility from lifetime subject to the constraint of lifetime income. Such an aggregated analysis gave rise to the result that consumption is less dependent on the current level of income and also to transitory changes in income. Instead, consumption is more responsive to the permanent income. This is because when a transitory gains or losses to income is spread over the lifetime flow of incomes, the per period gain or loss becomes small and its impact on consumption is negligible. This idea germinated in the work of Milton Friedman. Another important aspect in the discussion of consumption function was the introduction of interest rates, as done by Romer, highlighted the requirement for consumption to be seen as a decision related over a series of periods rather than one made in isolation. The empirical testing of the Keynesian consumption function has given mixed evidence. The utilization of either cross-sectional data or time series data greatly affects the results. We have shown the consumption function as being linearly dependent on income, but this assumption was tested by Kuznets, who suggested that consumption was a proportion of income rather than a function of it. There are three main problems faced in the empirical testing of the consumption function. First, the psychological law of consumption could not reconcile the estimates of cross-sectional marginal propensities. And second, the model C is equals to A plus BY, when transformed into an average consumption model, that is C by Y is equals to A by Y plus B, predicted a long-run declining spending rate and rising saving rate. That is, an increase in Y cause A by Y to decline and the average propensity to consume should fall. However, it has remained stable. Third, consumption functions estimated with cross-sectional data showed shifting or retrenching spending from one data set or year to another. Such behavior was not found with time series data and could not be explained. These problems rose based on the understanding of the cross-sectional data and time series data with information from the same consumer unit. This was later resolved as it was observed that cross-sectional data is data from a consumer at a point of time and time series data is data on the average behavior of all consumers over periods of time. Another criticism about the Keynesian consumption function was that it did not explain the different determinants of the average propensity to consume. The Keynesian function did not explain that the average propensity to consume depends on the income level, demographic, and age of the spending unit. This seems to make a valid argument because clubbing of all the different characteristics of consumers into one representative consumer is an oversimplification explanation.
Let us now summarize what we have learned in this module. Aggregate demand is defined as the total amount of goods and services produced in an economy at a given price and in a given time period. The various components of aggregate demand includes consumption, investment, government expenditure, and net exports. Consumption is the largest component of aggregate demand and it plays an important role in its calculation. It is defined as the total amount of goods and services that the people in the economy purchase for immediate consumption. Keynesian consumption function includes two elements, autonomous consumption and induced consumption. Autonomous consumption is defined as the amount of consumption that would take place even when the level of income is zero, and induced consumption is the consumption that is influenced with the level of income. The Keynesian consumption function, that is capital C, is equals to A plus BY, where capital C represents consumption, A represents autonomous consumption, B is equals to delta C divided by delta Y, that is marginal propensity to consume, and Y stands for income. The two essential characteristics of the Keynesian consumption function is that there will be some amount of consumption even when the level of income is zero, and second is that the current consumption depends upon current income alone, and with the increase in income, consumption also increases. The Keynesian psychological law of consumption states that with the increase in income, the individual's consumption increases but less than proportionately.